Welcome to week one of Hillman Talks Intro to Documentary Filmmaking. Y'all, I'm so excited. I appreciate all of your patience and the way in me putting this together. I had no idea that when I pitched the idea or shared the idea on TikTok, in the midst of all of the other amazing courses that were shared on that platform, how many people will be interested in this. There are over 50 people that are actually registered for this class, but it's public, it's accessible, it's free. I'm pretty sure there are going to be many others who are interested in taking this course. Have at it. My biggest takeaway for you all in taking this course is to unlock the inner documentary filmmaker within all of you, teaching you all how to find stories. For those of you who have filled out the Google Doc form or the Google form with story interests that you have already shared, they have been amazing. So y'all wheels are already turning, and I'm super, super excited to get started today. To give a little bit of housekeeping, these video formats I'm gonna try to keep them relatively short, concise, but impactful. And then I'll follow up with an email discussing what we talked about today. Any resources or links to anything else that I talk about in my videos, I will hyperlink them in the description box. Yes, you can go at your own pace while there is a culminating event of the virtual film festival. What day I haven't determined yet. No, you are not required to be a part of the film festival, but if you do, more power to you. Those have particular dates, but if this is a project that you want to take your time with, that you really want to process and digest, this is yours. Okay. I am merely a vessel and to help you get in that ball rolling. Let's go ahead and get started. So, for week one, today we are going to be talking about some documentary principles and how to find your story. So, first and foremost, a documentary film is a nonfiction film. So, first and foremost, a documentary film is a nonfiction film that documents real life events, peoples, or issues, or all three. Inform, educate, and record. The purpose of a documentary film is to either inform, educate, or record history. And one of my favorite taglines is I suggest you live your life in such a way that somebody will make a documentary about you within the next 15 to 20 years. That could go either way of how you live your life from what we are seeing today. So live your life in such a way that somebody will want to share your story within 15 to 20 years from now. And there are several different types of documentaries. If you are anything like me, I am a documentary head. I love watching nonfiction films, but all of them do not look the same. If the first one that pops into your head is you're envisioning a person sitting down, kind of like I am, and a talking head, so you see the person sitting down and getting interviewed and answering questions, that is the most traditional form of documentary filmmaking. And that is an expository documentary film. So, an expository documentary film consists of a sit down interview. It may consist of a narrator. So, an expository documentary film, it consists of a talking head interview. It may also consist of a narrator kind of guiding you through the story. It may follow a sequence or sequences, and it is heavy on archival images and footage. So, archival meaning older imagery. So, people going into the archives to pull out old videos and photos to enhance the story that you're seeing. So, you're not just sitting there watching a talking head the entire time. It provides dimension and texture to your story. And that is the most traditional type of documentary. So, for instance, if you watch the 10-part docu-series of Michael Jordan that came out in 2020, I believe. That is an expository documentary film. You had each episode where Michael Jordan is the key person, but he had like the most amazing archival imagery that I have ever seen. Go back and watch it when you get a chance. Another version of a film is Poetic. And so it is a stark contrast from expository because it does not have a narrator. It oftentimes does not have a narrator or any type of audio at all outside of sound. And so this is pulling on like your feelings and emotions and heartstrings. It doesn't necessarily follow a specific narrative, but it can convey a message. Consider it more experimental, less narrative based. The next is an observational documentary film. This is kind of self-explanatory. It's a film that you are observing a real life event happening in real time. So there may be interviews, but it's in the moment. You're getting that your subjects take on whatever it is that's happening right there in the moment. There are no sit down interviews. There is no narration. The subject or subjects, it could be the person trying to win a competition or a day in the life on a grand scale, but you are observing, the filmmaker is observing their subject in real time. The next kind of film is a participatory film. This is also kind of self-explanatory. So you as the filmmaker are a part of the film. You may or may not be the subject. And a good example of this, um, if you've ever seen the Hip Hop Evolution docuseries on Netflix, the key subject, you can see him as he's interviewing other subjects of the film, and he serves as a narrator. He centers himself as a part of the film, and that is a great example of a participatory documentary. The next kind of documentary is performative. A performative documentary prioritizes personal experience and emotional storytelling over facts. And that's not to say that facts and informing you is not a part of it, but that is second tier to personal experience and emotional storytelling. An amazing example of this is Beyonce's Homecoming Coachella documentary on Netflix, where we get insight into her brain, into how she put it together, how she felt in real time. So you see her sitting down, but you also see her engaging with her staff. You see her engaging with her dancers, with the band, with her children. You see her narrating all throughout. Like that is not just performative. Coachella was like observational. It was expository. It was a hybrid mix of a way to tell a story, and that it was grand on a grand scale, but that is a key example of how flexible you can really be in the best way to tell your story. um Lastly, there's reflexive documentary. Now, I'm not too familiar with this one, but from what I read, it is the art of the documentary filmmaking in and of itself. So the story is the process of making that specific documentary. As I said, I will share links to examples of each of these in the description box, but those are 6 different types of documentary films that you can choose from when wanting to choose your story. Now, when it comes to finding a story, I believe that everything is a story. Everything is a story. And one common misconception that people have is that you have to have some huge, grandiose sob story, sad story in order for people to want to sit down and listen to you, in order for people to want to sit down and watch and listen to what you have to say. And that is simply not the case. In my syllabus, I provided a link to an article that I wrote on my Substack, and it's called The Art of One. And that is something that I live by. And so when you are finding your story, and kudos to all of you who have submitted some examples of some stories that you would want to tell, and I'm going to end my class in a couple of minutes with how to refine that and make it even better. But for the sake of this course, I want you all to optimize the art of one. And here is what I mean by that. There's topics, two parts. There's topics and then there's stories. And so when wanting to choose a story to make your film on, here is what I want you to ask yourself. Are you a stickler for topics? So there were some examples of like Black history or Black maternal health. Those are topics. What within those topics do you want to tell a story about? So in Black maternal health, are you highlighting your own story as a Black pregnant person or one that already gave birth and you have children and you're wanting to reflect on your own story, or you wanted to highlight another person's story, or you wanting to sit down and interview a practitioner who emphasizes the importance of Black maternal health. Those are stories, right? And also with stories, think about the end goal in mind. Topics are broad and they leave with a huge question mark because they are so broad, but stories have tension, stories have conflict, and stories have an end goal in mind. So keep that in mind as you are going through your topics, as you are refining your story of what you will want to share on film. Topics are more aimless, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but topics are more aimless and are more surface level. We want to get down to the nitty gritty. So, if and when you read my article about the art of one, there's a few examples that I talk about often in there that are key examples of just taking one thing and wringing the hell out. I say, wring the hell out of that rag. Take one story and how can we make it as detailed, as grandiose, and as spectacular as possible? For example, if you watch Thurgood Marshall's film, where Chadwick Boseman played Thurgood Marshall in the film Thurgood. I don't remember what year it came out. It had to be almost 10 years ago at this point. But that film, that almost 90-minute film, was literally only about one of Thurgood Marshall's cases. And we know Thurgood Marshall to be one of the first Black Supreme Court justice, this huge figure in not just Black history, but our history in general. But this film, even giving other details and context, this specific film was about one of his cases, right? And they turned that into a 90-minute film. If you've ever watched the film Malcolm and Marie, with Zendaya and I hate calling him Denzel Washington's son because he has a name. I'm blanking on it. But Denzel Washington's son, it gave the feel of a stage play because it was only two characters. It was one location. The film was 2 hours, and that entire film was literally about one argument that they kept going in and out of the entire time for the duration of that movie. I actually think the film was almost 3 hours long. Two characters, one location, 2 hours long, one argument. And they wrung the hell out of that mug to tell a story however you want to convey it, right? And they made a film out of that. So with your subjects, with your stories, let's look at some examples of the ones that you all shared with me. So we have issues related to Black American culture, for example, Black history, how creatives and artists make a living, people's passions, Malcolm X, and search for my dad. These are amazing, by the way, but let's get more granular, right? So starting with issues related to Black American culture. Unfortunately, but fortunately for us, there are several issues that plague our community. What is one that you want to go more in depth on, and who specifically within our community can you do that story on? So like I said, if issues related to Black American culture could be DEI. That isn't just us. We are a part of the marginalized community, but are you following a woman who is the only Black woman that works in the C-suite in her company, and she's, wanting to pivot, or she's wanting to get her, or whatever it is, right? So in that story, what is the end result? And also with your stories, I want you to keep in mind, why should people care? People who don't look like you, people who are not familiar with your subject, with your story, who are from a small town in Montana, but you can tug on just the heartstrings of the human experience. Why should they care? That is a key question you should keep in the front, in the back of your mind when wanting to share your story. For example, another Black history. Again, what about Black history? What is it that you want to share about Black history? Are you wanting to talk about Black farmers? Are you wanting to talk about Black midwives? Are you wanting to talk about the erasure of Black communities? That is one of my favorite topics to continue to delve in and explore. What about Black history makes you interested enough and curious enough to want to do more research on? And what is the end goal that you have in mind with Black history? How creatives and artists make a living. This is a really cool topic because there's one, if there's an artist or creative that you have access to, or it be yourself, right? And that can be your subject. You can reach out to somebody who you admire, creative or artist that you admire, and ask would they be interested in have a documentary made on them. And then in preliminary interviewing, which we'll talk about in another class, you can kind of probe in your informational interview on what do they want. Of course they want to make a living, they want to make money, right? But what is it that they want? So for example, me as a documentary filmmaker, I identify as a storyteller. I want to continue highlighting underrepresented people, places, and spaces for the rest of my life and get paid well to do that. That's still kind of broad, but that gives you a good idea of like my mission and my goal for the work that I want to do, but specifically telling stories of marginalized and underrepresented people, places, and spaces. That is my why. And so that is a question that I would ask that prospective creator or that prospective artist who was trying to make a daily living off doing the things that they love. People's passions and why they do what they do. And ironically enough, when I saw that, good idea, when I saw that, I was like, oh, it would be so cool to like, if we did it through the lens of a child, right? If we did it through the lens of exploring the passions of children and seeing what they come up with, all of the amazing and random things that they say. And one, because it can be an inspirational piece, right? We're reminded of like what it means to be a child, getting back to our childlike ambitions and passions. And that is an angle that you can use to explore people's passions. If you feel led to use it, please use it. But that's just one of the first things that came to my mind, right? Malcolm X. Okay. Now, there are several films about our good brother Malcolm X, and that is not to deter you from doing a story on Malcolm X. So if you have a topic or a story that you want to explore that has already been expressed or shared, or like civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, or what have you, my homework for you would be to watch and read what is already out there and find the gap. That is another tip. So all of the information that is out there, what is an angle that you can come in and give refreshed energy, refreshed information, and tell a story that we may not have learned before. So an example I have for that is there's several films on Dr. Martin Luther King, immersed in the civil rights movement, all those things. If I were to do a story on Dr. Martin Luther King, he would not be my center. I am interested in learning more about his mother, Alberta, because nobody talks about the assassination of her within that church. I want to explore her story. Not only that, Martin Luther King, I believe, there were 5 of them, 4 siblings plus him. I think 3 of them passed away from heart conditions. 3 of them passed away from heart conditions. And I believe even MLK's Jr., some of his children also passed away from heart conditions. And I would talk about the impact of, racism and trauma and classism and just being in the fight and the impact that has on our health. So those are different angles. Those are gaps that I would want to fill if I were to explore going into more depth about MLK's story. And so that's what that behoove you. If you are wanting to learn more about Malcolm X or tell a greater story about Malcolm X, come from an angle of being a gap filler. Provide us with new information and be very clear on what your end goal is with telling his story. Search for your dad. This is very, very unique, and I want to spend a little time on this because there's several different ways that you can go about it. Your subject could be you and the journey and the quest of searching for your dad, or the subject could be your father and why he left, or all of those things, right? So there's several different ways that you can go about it. Lead with, okay, what's the end goal? So if you, the filmmaker, are the subject, the end goal is, okay, I want to find my dad. But also to know, just because you have an end goal in mind, that doesn't mean you will always meet that end goal. And that's also a part of the story, right? So what is that resolve? And you have to go through back and forth with those answers, right? If I find my dad, what would that look like for me? Do I want to capture that? Do I want to showcase those raw emotions? But finishing this film, if I don't, right? would you be okay with that also being a resolve? And so we'll explore more in our office hours, and talking more about that. But these are just, there was like 50 examples, but these are just some of the ones that came to mind that I wanted to give more tips and details to. And you can take the feedback that I provided for some of these story examples and probe it into your own. So the biggest takeaway from today's lesson and understanding what a documentary film is, again, nonfiction, real life, replaying a real life event or a person, or a real life event, person, or issues. Also, am I telling a topic? Meaning, is this aimless, or am I telling a story? Does it have conflict? Does it have tension? Does it have an end goal in mind, whether that end goal is reached or not? So I hope this was helpful. I feel like I talked a lot. I feel like I gave a lot of information. As I said, any links or examples that I shared in this course will be in the description box. Feel free to follow up with me. I'm easily accessible. You have my email address, which is also in the description box. And we are gearing up for week 2 next week. And it's all about the art of pre-production. Pre-production meaning all of the logistics that go into making sure you have a successful and seamless and functional production day. But your homework in the meantime, in between time, I want you to find your favorite documentary. Even if you've already watched it, I want you to rewatch it. I want you to rewatch it with a refreshed lens. And I want you, without even reading the description, don't read the description. I want you to watch it and see if you can come up with a 2 to 3 sentence synopsis. I'm going to put the definition of a synopsis. It's just an overview of what you're watching, a general summary and overview of what you're watching. If you can come up with one on your own. And we'll talk about that more next week. Am I going to have office hours? Yes, as I said, I'm going to follow up via email with each of you to let you know when that is. I'm trying to figure out a way to have like a discussion area. Y'all, when I say I just be doing stuff on a whim, and so on the back end, I'm like, logistically, I didn't think about that. I don't care. I'll figure that out later. I'll figure it out later. My motto, as you'll learn, I have several mottos. Everything is figure outable, and even rocket science, because we have rocket scientists as a profession. So I'm not going to make this more complicated than what it needs to be, because I don't want y'all to make this class more complicated than what it needs to be. If you need to reach me, I am reachable. I am excited. Go and watch your favorite documentary film and go in it with refreshed eyes, and let's talk about it in our next class next Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. Again, welcome to Intro to Documentary Filmmaking. I am your teacher, Miss Alana Marie, and I will see y'all next week.